Report. Hey, welcome to the podcast. This week we are talking about The Last Man on Earth, a movie from the 1960s with Vincent Price, and I am here with Travis.
Hey there.
Hi. We are back once again. This is what, episode 9? Yeah,
We're on
episode
episode
9.
9. All right.
Episode 9, almost to a good round even number. Um, yeah, how's your week been?
Not too bad. Work's been good. I haven't had to deal with customers. That's been nice. Just working with training people, which,
Nice.
yeah, has its own fun to it.
I can relate.
Yeah, I
I
was
just
about to say,
started
I'm taking on a teaching role right now.
there you are. Hey, we're both teaching right now.
Yeah, look at that.
I just started my new teaching job at my old teaching job.
That's right.
It's been an amazing week, honestly. Work
Yeah.
wise, it has been a pretty great week. Can't complain. Probably the best first week I've ever had at a job. And next week is
Wow.
fall break, so I don't even have to worry about coming back for seconds and getting spoiled because they're gonna leave and go away for a week and then come back and we start the whole thing all over again. So I don't know if they'll have been around me long enough to hate me by that point. So that side has
Give them
been
time.
good. Yeah, that side has been great. Work wise has been fantastic.
Yeah.
Personal wise, unfortunately, me and my wife were trying to buy a house, and
Hmm.
yeah, we sell the house we loved. It was like dream house, perfect every way, shape, and form. Couldn't think of anything wrong with it. Put an offer in, and unfortunately, we didn't get the house. They went with a
Oh.
different offer, unfortunately, and that happened last night at like
Oh, man.
10:30, I think. It was late too. Yeah, went to bed with
Hmm.
that knowledge, so that
Ah.
sucked. Yeah, woke up a little
Yeah.
angry and annoyed about that. But hey, what can you do? Everyone I've
Yeah.
spoken to has a similar story when they kind of
I was going to say.
went through the pains of buying a house. So I guess
Yeah.
this is the first of one of our hurdles. So we're gonna keep looking, and I think we'll find something perfect as well.
Oh
I
yeah,
feel like it's like
I think
dating.
you'll find something.
You got to keep throwing stuff out there
You got to
until
play the field.
you got to
Yeah.
play the field. There's a lot of houses out there. One of them doesn't have genital warts. One of
There
them
you go.
doesn't have genital warts. It's just the
Uh,
one. It's the one that you got to find. Speaking of genital warts, I guess let's just
oh,
get into the
nice.
movie. That's what I do. I make
I
good
like it.
transitions involving unfortunate sexually transmitted illnesses. Um, so we're going to talk about Last Man on Earth, which is well, this is going to be an interesting one because this is going to be maybe the first time that you and I have a little bit of a disagreement. I don't know.
Hmm.
I don't know. We
Now we
talked about
probably
it just
agree on a
briefly.
lot of the same things,
Yeah.
but overall, I think we might disagree.
All right. Well, we'll find out. We'll see if how it turns out. So let's talk about a little bit about the background of the movie, and then we'll jump into the plot and talk about that a little bit there. And
Mhm.
yeah, so let's get into it. This movie, The Last Man on Earth, and it was
Mhm.
came out in was it 1964, I think. And it
Yep,
was
64.
it was based on the novel from 1954, I Am Legend, which was
Hmm.
written by Richard Matheson. I
Yes.
believe I'm pronouncing that name correctly. I could be wrong there, but he also wrote the screenplay of this movie, or he wrote the first
That's right.
draft of it. Yeah. Do you know why his name is not on it?
I don't know why.
Because he fucking hated it.
Oh, really?
Yes. So he wrote it, and I guess studio demanded he change certain parts, and
Mm.
he acquiesced, hated what the finished version looked like, so he didn't want his name on it at all. So he basically made up an alias to go with, so that way
Oh, he
he
had an
didn't have to
Alan
take
Smithy.
credit. Yeah, he has an Alan Smithy. So this movie is credited to the writer being Logan Swanson,
Oh.
which is going to be the name of my next D&D character.
Oh, that's awesome.
No matter who it is. I usually play a paladin. I'm going to play a paladin named Logan Swanson.
I like it.
Yeah, yeah. So the background on this movie, it only took 10 years for the book to become a movie. The book was actually purchased originally by Hammer Films in the UK, the
Mhm.
distributor of all kinds of amazing horror films. If you look up Hammer Films on Amazon, there's a really good box set where you get
Mhm.
all, I think it's like 8 or 10 Hammer films on Blu-ray. I bought it for my wife a few years ago because she really likes
Oh,
the old Hammer horror films. She watched this one with me as much as she could suffer through it, and then she
oh,
gave up
really?
a little bit. Yeah.
Really?
So they Hammer Films did not end up producing this because they were worried that because of the subject matter and the censors wouldn't allow it in England. So they ended up selling the rights to a American producer who was the one that ended up producing the movie.
I see.
Um, Originally, when it was a Hammer Films production, the director was going to be Fritz Lang, who
Ooh.
was the director of M and Metropolis,
Mm,
which are amazing,
yes.
amazing silent movies. Um,
Oh, so good.
Seek those out if you ever have time. So
Hmm.
originally the writer was like, hell yeah, dude, like my movie, my book, because this was his first novel, right? This was his very first novel he ever wrote.
Oh, that'll mess with you.
So yeah, he had written some short stories and stuff like that beforehand, but this was his first novel, and so it immediately gets optioned for a movie, probably thinking he's going to be working with some really good Hollywood people, right? He's going to be writing the screenplay. He's going to
Hmm.
work with Fritz Lang. Hammer Films is producing it, right? And then all that
Yeah.
goes to hell in a handbasket, and none of that ends up
Hmm.
happening. And instead, we get a rather low budget. I guess it was the estimation of the budget was $300,000 is what I could find, which today that
Hmm.
would be about $3 million. So
That's
300,000 in 1964 would be about a $3 million movie now, which would be like an independent film.
yeah. That would
Like
be.
that, yeah, yeah, that would be an independent film. Yeah, I don't think you're going to see a big Hollywood movie made for less than like 20-30 million dollars because they're going to
Wow.
put an advertising machine behind it. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, you're just not going to see movies like cheaply that like that made. I mean, the days of Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction and Clerks and things like that. Unfortunately, a lot of those days are, you don't see them as much where those movies get
No.
purchased by big Hollywood studios. Every now and then you see
Right.
it happen, but
Hmm.
it's usually fairly rare. So that whole thing fell through, and rather than getting to work with, like I said, Fritz Lang and everyone, it ended up
Hmm.
going to a completely different set of directors, two different directors. So we'll talk about that. And
Hmm.
it was shot in Italy to save money because they, like I said, they did not want to spend a lot of money on this. The only star in this movie is pretty much Vincent Price.
Yep.
And that's pretty much it, which is kind of like this movie is an example of neo-realism in that it is using largely unknown actors or sorry, my cat is doing something bizarre in the corner. She's just like
Yeah.
crawling up the side of the wall and I don't know why. So I'm just staring at her like, what in God's name are you doing, girl? Yeah, so neo-realism in this particular instance is it kind of presents it almost like a documentary on like everyday life, like the mundanity of everyday existence. And
Okay.
do you seeing how that movie ties into this? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And you get that. You also get actors that maybe you get one named actor and then the rest of the cast is nobodies who largely are
Hmm.
untrained actors who may have just been in the city at the time. You
That
get a lot
tracks.
of that here. So in that way, it's kind of an example of neorealism, which is not really what the author had in mind. However, of the versions of this movie that have been made, of which there are four
Hmm.
versions, and we're going to talk about them. Um, this is according to the author and everything, after reading the book, which I did read the book,
Oh,
this is the closest any of them come to the actual story. And it's still
okay. And it's
not
still, yeah.
not not very good. Or maybe I'm wrong. We'll find out.
We'll
Um,
see.
the writer said, Richard Matheson said his ideal cast and director would have been George Miller from Mad Max and Harrison Ford.
Oh, I could see that.
I think that would have been a pretty good
That would
combination.
have been. Oh yeah.
So
Well,
in the
George
spirit of
Miller's
that,
one of
do
my
you have
favorite
a
actors or
yeah,
favorite
direct?
directors.
Oh yeah, hell, Bay Pig in the City is a classic.
Yes.
um, do you have a director actor combo that you think would have pulled this off?
Oh, that's a really tough one. I think. Well, no, this definitely would not be a good vision for this writer, but I don't know, maybe a Raimi and um oh help me out here, Bruce Campbell.
Yeah, you could do Bruce
That could
Campbell and
be that
Sam
could
Raimi.
I think that would be something.
I went in a different direction. I thought Christopher Nolan, Christian Bale.
Oh,
I
ooh,
thought
you know
that
what?
could be knock it out of the park.
That really could.
That, I
I
think
went a
that
very different direction.
I think that could be the best version that you could ever have because Christian Bale is absolutely madman. Like
Mm-hmm.
he would get into character. Like he would probably put himself in isolation for 3 years just to
Oh
get into
yeah.
the mind frame of what it is to be Morgan. Or he's not actually Morgan. It's just what they call him in this movie.
Well, that's not the. See, I haven't
No,
read the
no,
book.
no, no, no. They changed his last name. I don't know why. They changed the character's last name.
Huh.
Yeah. Yeah. Weird. Weird.
Weird.
A
Maybe it
weird
was
thing to
just
do.
easier for Italian actors to pronounce.
I don't know. They changed the last name of the main character. Sorry, Vincent
Mhm.
Price's last name didn't change. And they also changed his profession. And they're called
Oh,
vampires here, but
yeah.
they're not in the story. They are presented as actually being a threat. They're like fast moving and kind of thinking. Whereas here
Mm-hmm.
they're kind of like laboring. Come
Yeah, that
out,
was.
Morgan! Morgan!
You
Yeah.
hear?
And also the dog is a completely different thing in the book. But other than that, and the book ends very differently. Very, very
Oh.
differently. But other than those things, the book and it has a lot of similarities. There are some obvious differences that we can get
Hmm.
into as they pop up. But I
Right.
wrote a lot of them down. I tried to write all of them down, but um, I
It
wasn't
sounds like
able
there's a
to
lot.
get. There's a fair amount. There's a fair amount. There's a fair amount.
Hmm.
So when this movie came out, it was not very successful. It became a cult movie later on. Was 2004. Rob Zombie presented it
Well.
on DVD for whatever the fuck that means, which I don't think it means anything other than like they slapped Quentin Tarantino did a Quentin Tarantino Presents DVD
Oh.
series that came out. That's how I discovered Hardcore Logo. This is me
Oh.
referencing a much better movie talking about this movie. Hardcore Logo is a fake documentary in the vein of Spinal Tap, but about a hardcore punk band
Oh.
that is reuniting in from the late 80s. They're reuniting in like the late 90s to like do a little 10-year anniversary tour. And it's basically just how horrible that tour goes. But it's
Mhm.
similarly, Quentin Tarantino had nothing to do with that movie other than he just puts his name on the DVD. Same thing
Oh
with Rob
wow.
Zombie here. He just puts his name on the DVD. Rob Zombie presents. This movie is actually in the public domain. There are hundreds of different versions of this.
Okay.
There is infinite number of versions of this movie. Yeah, it is a public domain movie. The book is not public domain, but the movie is completely public domain.
Hmm.
Complete public domain movie. Like I said last week, I own this movie in like 5 different versions. I have a
Oh
Vincent
wow.
Price. Well, so I have a Vincent Price DVD collection that has it.
Hmm.
I have a 1960s horror movie collection that has it. I have a B movie and sci-fi movie collection that has it. I have another sci-fi movie collection that has it, and then I have an End of the World movie collection that has it in there.
Good
Um,
lord.
and each of those versions is slightly different quality. None of
Hmm.
them are very good quality, but they're all
That's fair.
slightly better qualities, different qualities of different things. Um, yeah, the writer hated this movie after it came out. Even after writing it, hated it, wanted nothing to do with it. Hated it when it
Hmm.
came out, though. Felt that Vincent Price was horribly miscast, and I tend to agree.
There's parts of me that agree with that. Well, actually,
He,
there's a huge part of me that agrees with that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. He also thought that the direction was rather poor, um, which gets
Fair.
us into the directors. Which there were two directors, although the writer did say he liked this movie better than Omega Man, which is what we're going to be watching next week. We'll get to that at the end of the
Hmm.
podcast, but he did think that this was a superior version of the two versions that came out during his lifetime.
Oh, can't wait for that one.
Yeah. So this was directed by Sidney Salkow in the American version, who mostly did 60s and 50s TV westerns. I didn't really
Mhm.
see anything else to his name that was worth really mentioning. Lots of Bonanza, stuff like
Oh,
that.
okay.
Basically, if it was a TV western, my grandparents have probably seen it and have made
Yep.
me watch it, and he directed a lot of those.
Oh,
In
okay.
Italy, the film was credited to Ubaldo Raganja. I think that's how you say his name. I might be putting too much cheese on that
That's
but I don't know. Um,
I wouldn't be able to dispute it.
I did a little bit of I did Duolingo of Italian for like
Yeah.
I think I went for like 100 days straight, and then I stopped, and then I kind of lost it. But
Yeah, I keep falling off.
I really enjoyed learning that 100 days of
Hmm.
Italian. It was cool. I got to
Yeah.
like whatever, like level 5 or one of the levels. What it was like
Yeah.
the midway through, something like that. Like I was like
Hmm.
halfway through the Italian course in that 100 days.
Nice.
And then of course I stopped and I completely don't learn it all.
Oh yeah.
So Ubaldo, let's call him Uwe. He
Nice.
also wrote this movie. He was also credited as one of the writers. He was one of the guys that
Hmm.
kind of touched up the script after the lead writer left. He only ever directed 5 movies. Um,
Oh.
yeah, it was also accredited to another writer called Furio Monetti. I believe is how you
Hmm.
say his name, which is the most Italian name I can think of.
That's pretty
And
close.
the only thing he ever directed was this. That was it. He directed
Oh.
this, and that's all. That's the only thing credited to his name.
Wow.
Yeah. And then we get to our lead star, which the writer said, like
Hmm.
I said, was horribly miscast, and I tend to agree. Vincent Price. And Vincent Price is known for playing bad guys. And in this, he is
Yeah.
not playing the bad guy. He's playing the protagonist.
Yeah.
He is popular for, millennials. People our age are going to know him for Edward Scissorhand. They're also going
Hmm.
to know him for being the villain in Great Mouse Detective. He did the voice there.
That's right.
Yes, Great Mouse Detective is my favorite Disney movie of all time.
Hmm.
He also was the narrator of Thriller for Michael Jackson,
Yep.
which I listened to an interview with him and he talked about, you want to know how much money he made through that?
Oh, I couldn't even imagine.
Nothing.
Oh,
Not a
okay.
dime.
That I
Not
wasn't
a
expecting
single
that.
thing. Nothing. Not a bit.
Wow.
Um, Older fans, those of you, would know him for basically being the star of almost every single 1950s and 60s Edgar Allan Poe adaptation that came onto
Yep.
screen. Mask of Red Death, oh shit, The Raven.
Hmm.
He's also in several horror movies. He's in a Bat,
Oh yeah.
which is a good one. Um, do you have a favorite
House on
Vincent?
Haunted Hill.
House on Haunted Hill, that was in the collection. It played
Mm.
immediately after
Oh yeah.
Last Man on Earth, and I mean immediately. Like the DVD doesn't stop. Last Man on Earth ends, that final frame, House on Haunted Hill starts like immediately after.
Dang.
It was quite the tonal shift whenever I was watching these movies.
Yeah, no, I believe that.
Um, do you have a favorite Vincent Price
Um,
movie? Mine is obviously
mm,
Great Mouse Detective. That's kind of where I
that's
found.
fair.
That's where I first came into contact with Mr. Price and
Yeah.
his
Uh,
antics.
that is a great movie. I will
He's
say I
also in The
do.
Fly. We haven't talked about The Fly. You got to talk about The Fly. He was in that. The original. He was in the original
Oh, the
Fly.
original.
Yeah,
See, I don't
the
think I've
original.
actually seen the original.
It's pretty fun. It's a fun movie. It's very different than
Yeah.
the Jeff Goldblum
Oh, I
one with David
imagine.
Cronenberg, but
Yeah, I was gonna
still
say.
fun in its own separate way. A good time.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, like House on Haunted Hill is really good. I do like the Edgar Allan Poe stuff because I mean, he's just that's that's just him all the way. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
like he did a lot of TV spots and on other people's shows and stuff like that, and he was just really good at being Vincent Price.
Yeah. Yeah. He kind
That's
of is one of those
mainly how I
characters.
remember him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he kind of plays himself on a lot of roles.
Yep.
If they ever do a Vincent Price bioflick, I think Nicolas Cage would make a great Vincent Price.
Ooh, I could see
Because
that.
he definitely, whenever we saw, that's that recent horror movie he was in with Reinfeld.
Oh yeah.
He was fantastic in that, I thought, and I think
Yes.
that Vincent Price was kind of gives me similar vibes at
Yeah,
times
I
to
could
a
see
lot of
that.
what he was doing
Yeah.
in that particular role there. Um, so yeah, this movie, whereas we get before we get into the plot,
Yeah.
was an inspiration for a lot of things.
Oh.
So George Romero watched this and obviously took some major inspiration
Yep.
for Night of the Living Dead. Charlton Heston watched this and hated it, and that
Oh.
is what one of the reasons that he got the idea to do Omega Man.
Oh, okay.
Um, the creators of Fallout had watched this and read the books
Mm-hmm.
and had took a lot of inspiration when they made Fallout. Stephen King
Yeah.
was a big fan of the story. Danny
Mm-hmm.
Boyle, 28
Yeah.
days later, 28 weeks later, and soon to be 28
Uh,
years later,
oh
and
yeah, that's right.
Sunshine. Can't forget about that, and
Mm-hmm.
Train Spotting,
Oh yeah.
but
Oh,
also The Beach. Um,
okay, I didn't know that.
Pretty much every zombie movie ever has gotten a lot of inspiration from this movie and or book,
Yeah.
depending on what they were doing or what it was they first came in contact to with it with
Mm-hmm.
the material ad. The movie, like as we'll talk about when we get to the plot, is very much zombie. You could take a lot of zombie and inspiration from that.
Absolutely.
Whereas the book, it's not that at all. It's a completely different thing. It's a very different thing. So I guess let's just get into the plot of this movie, and
Yep.
we'll start talking about all the fun that is that. Let me find my notes here where I wrote down the plot because this movie is, ugh, it's something, all right.
Yeah.
I was not a fan,
Yeah.
and
I
I believe
didn't.
you said you were a fan.
I liked it. I didn't mind
Okay,
it. I mean, there was
well,
well, okay. I kind of had to pick pieces out of it
yeah,
because there were
yeah.
parts where I just had to pause it because I was laughing so hard at a
Okay,
very unintentionally funny scene.
there are some of
So
those. There are some of
yes, there
those,
was.
which is
Oh
maybe its saving
yes.
grace.
So there were times where that was happening, and but then there was also parts where I was just like, yeah, no, I like it.
Yeah. So let's just get into the plot so we can
Hmm.
see what we agree or disagree on. So we start with
Yeah.
a deserted city
Hmm.
in complete black and white. I like the black and white. Love black and white movies.
Yes.
Love
There
them.
was an in color option. I didn't go for that. I was going to try both, but I was like, you know what? I
Oh,
like the black and white so much. I don't want to ruin that. You know,
oh, interesting.
I think
I have not seen this in color. I'd be kind of curious as to what that
it's
looks like a little bit.
it's on Amazon Prime that I know of.
Interesting. Interesting. Interesting.
Hmm.
So, as we start with the deserted city, we also see the occasional dead body littered here, there, and everywhere.
Hmm.
And honestly, they don't look dead. They look like they're sleeping.
Yeah, they look like crew members.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Immediately.
Yeah.
Immediately. Speaking of people sleeping, we see Vinny Boy, our main
Yep.
character, and he immediately lets us know when he wakes up that he has been here for 3 years.
Yes.
And as we begin the movie, I wrote down, is this where the Misfits stole their font style from? Because the credits have a very Misfits font style. Um,
Okay.
we learn
Yeah.
that the world has been taken out via some kind of plague, and for some
Hmm.
reason, our protagonist is alive and is immune to this world-ending plague. And
Hmm.
I'm immediately reminded of COVID, and hey,
Right.
maybe we all should get vaccinated.
I mean,
So
remember
this
when those
movie
were
is
a good
ba
thing?
exact, yeah, yeah, yeah. Get your booster. Um, how do you feel about movies based on books? Do you feel like a movie needs to follow the book truly, or should it be a complete
Oh.
adaptation, an inspiration? How do you feel about that? Because this movie deviates from the book in several ways, and then it
Hmm.
follows the book very truly, honestly, in a couple other ways.
That's actually really tough for me because I'm trying to think of movies where I've felt really good about the adaptation. Uh, I think one of the best ones I've ever seen where the movie actually kind of is better than the book, is like Fight Club. I
Yeah,
think
I would
I
agree.
think it
Yeah,
does a better job of like being coherent, I guess. Which
yeah,
may not have been the goal, but
I like
of
that
the
Fight
book.
Club has a lot of like visual jokes and gags that it plays
Yes.
with the audience that the book does not. and cannot
Mm-hmm.
do. So Fight Club is kind of like taking the anarchistic nature of the book and kind of turning
Mm-hmm.
that
Yes.
into a visual thing. And I think that that is kind of
Mm-hmm.
a very novel way of doing it. And
Absolutely.
I always thought David Fincher's version of Fight Club was really cool.
Oh, absolutely. Now, on the flip side of that, one of my favorite books of all time is Michael Crichton's Timeline.
Yeah,
And
we talked about this.
yeah, oh yes, any chance I get. Um, one of the worst movies I've ever seen, of course, but you want to talk about deviating from what made the story great. They didn't do any of it.
Yeah,
They just it was the most safe, boring movie. I fell asleep through it. I've never finished it all the way through.
we're gonna finish it one of these days.
I don't know if I can.
I
Unless I'm
feel
forced
like
to.
Yeah. I feel like there's got to be a happy medium. I feel like if
Yeah.
you deviate so far from the source material, then my question is, why did you like take the source material? Which is kind of like
Hmm.
the thing with Resident Evil, and we talked about that, where it's like this
Right.
has so little to do with the games. Why not just make it its own thing? Because it
Exactly.
obviously has nothing to do with the game really at all.
Hmm.
Um, but I
I
also
think there
don't think like
I
when the Harry Potter
y-
books came out, when those were turned
yeah.
into movies, I think a lot of people got very specific about like, well, it didn't do the book did this or the movie didn't do this. And then
I think you had to
uh
really nitpick on that because I didn't read all of those
I've
books,
never read any
but
of them.
oh really?
Never read
I
any of them.
read from like
Don't
the
give a fuck
third
about them.
to the
But
seventh. Yeah.
yeah,
Um
I've never read any of the Harry Potter books, but I have seen all the Harry Potter movies and I found all
yeah,
of them entertaining. There was
exactly.
none of them that I was like, this is a bad movie. I like the Harry Potter movies. I think they're
Yeah,
fun movies. For like a kid, if I had a kid, I would definitely be like, yeah, you could watch the Harry Potter movies. They're like
absolutely.
y'all's generation Star Wars. It's very
Absolutely.
entertaining. It's very
It's
high
it's
action.
basically Star
It's
Wars
yeah,
if you put them
it's
side by side.
if you put them side, but yeah, it's very low thought in my opinion. I don't think that
Hmm.
there's a lot of like I don't know. I've never read the books, and I feel like just watching the movies, I can kind of get the gist of the whole
Yeah.
idea of the book, to the point that like
You're right.
I don't feel a need to read the books.
That's fair.
So
That's actually really fair.
when people got all upset that the Harry Potter movies were not perfectly the version of the books,
See,
well,
that's
I don't care. I
no,
don't
and
think
I
a
think
movie
Harry
should be a
Potter
version of a book. I don't want to see a
uh,
movie that's just the book turned into a movie, because it's not
yeah,
going to work, because
no.
that's not how books work, right? As you're
Right.
reading, you're creating a visual picture in your head of the words on
Yeah.
the page, and that visual picture is going to be uniquely yours. It's not going to be the same. It may have similar characteristics as another person.
Hmm.
Like you and that other person might both imagine that the character has um, a certain look to them that the book kind of portrays because of the way it's written, but
Hmm.
your image is going to be a little bit different than their image ever so slightly, and those little
Absolutely.
nuances are kind of what makes the distinctions. And I just don't feel the need to get lost in those when I'm watching a movie that's a version of a book. Like
Hmm.
I think a lot of people lost their minds when they've like gender or race swapped certain characters for books.
Oh, that.
It doesn't bother me at all. I don't
Not at
care.
all.
I
Not
do
one
not
bit.
give a shit. If
Especially if
if
the
that
main
hangs up.
character or the original character is a ginger. I'm totally okay with getting rid of that. Whoops, let that slip. No, I'm kidding.
um uh yeah, and so
But
like I that doesn't bother
yeah,
me at all when movies do that. I think that
yeah,
that's fine. I feel like you should have a creative license to do that. But at the
absolutely.
same time, I feel like if you take things so far that the movie no longer has anything in common with the themes, the
Hmm.
ideas, the nuances, the subtleties of the source material, then you should
Hmm.
probably just change your story, because like then
Yeah,
it's
really.
like similar with like Shining. I guess The Shining is like the classic example. Stanley Kubrick's Shining
Yeah,
changes a huge amount from Stephen King's novel.
I've never
To the
actually read The Shining. I actually need to
It's a
read
good
it.
read, especially this Halloween. It'll be a fun read.
Oh, okay, yeah, that'd be fun.
You
Oh,
could
that's a
probably
good
find
idea.
it online for free, or
Uh,
listen to the audiobook for free at
that's
least.
usually how I'll do it.
There you go. So I guess we'll just get back to the movie. You
Why not?
kind of going into a long discussion about for a different time.
Adaptation. Yeah.
For a different time. Long discussion about adaptations of books and films and
Yeah.
where the subtleties lie. We could go
Hmm.
movie by movie and analyze it.
Oh, I think so.
So this movie, back to the plot, Vinny Boy sits down
Hmm.
and he starts to talk about everything.
Yeah, the
Pretty much
voiceover
everything. He's also the
is
narrator. The first half of this movie is a hard watch.
yeah, I'll give you that.
Yeah. It's basically him walking around going like, "Oh, I'm out of garlic.
Yeah.
Should
They
get
they
some of
lean
that."
so heavy in the vampire stuff.
So in the book, that's presented differently. So in the book, he doesn't know they're vampires. He learns it slowly over the course of the book. It's a thing
Oh.
where, like, through experimentation, through trial and error, he kind of learns that they're vampires. Um,
Oh.
in the movie, he just knows all this right from the start, and it just
Yeah.
is him. The movie is literally a almost completely silent person walking around a house
Hmm.
where the narrator, which is also Vincent Price, comments on what the actor in the scene is doing, which
Yes.
is mostly just walking around his house, making a shopping list of things he needs to
Hmm.
get.
Yes.
That's about, and then picking up dead bodies, some of which
Hmm.
were dummies, and some of which were
Hmm.
real people. You know, when he puts the dead bodies in the car at the very start of it before he leaves, you know how
Uh-huh.
he's real careful with those bodies?
Oh yeah.
It's because those are real people.
Okay.
Vincent Price was apparently insistent on being like, no, I want to pick up the real bodies
Oh wow.
and do it, which is why when he puts them in the car, he does it very, very carefully. Um,
Hmm.
and then later on, when he throws people into the pit, they're
Yeah.
dummies because he just fucking tosses them without any regard. Just get out of here. So the first problem, well, like the writing of this movie is a problem. The acting of this movie is a problem, but a lot of it is just like kind of because of
I think the issue there is it's really hard to get Vincent Price to not be Vincent Price.
I don't even know if it's
And
so much that. I think from like a writing standpoint, you should never rely
oh,
this much on narration.
you
And
are
it's
right.
all just narration. It's just him until you get to the flashback. It's just
Uh-huh.
him talking over him doing shit.
And I don't
And
know
it's not
if
entertaining at all. He
no,
is
yeah,
the
that part
only
was
actor. To make
yeah.
this movie work, you need a charismatic actor.
Hmm.
Vincent Price is not that charismatic. He's charismatic, I'll give you,
He's
but he works
charismatic
better
when he's
off of
doing
people.
other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, he needs to be the villain. He needs to work off of a good protagonist. That he's
Yeah,
great at that.
he needs to be
Fantastic
a
at that.
ghoul, like
Yes,
something to be feared.
he is not
And
a he is not this. He's not charismatic. Like Will Smith is a better casting choice and I Am Legend. That
right.
movie I think is shitty in its own way.
Yeah.
Um maybe if you watch the changed ending it's a little bit better, but still
Oh,
even
I
then
didn't know
it's
that.
kind yeah, there's an alternate ending they released.
Oh,
Um it's still kind of shitty to me, but Will Smith is
yeah.
a better casting because at least he's charismatic.
He's
You
very
know, he's
charismatic.
interesting. He's interesting to watch visually. I can watch him walk
Yeah.
around a house and mumble over needing garlic and gas,
Mhm.
and
Yeah, and I didn't
maybe I'm not so upset.
well, I would say this about that first part, totally agree with you there. It's later on that I feel like I enjoyed watching Vincent Price
Yeah,
on the screen, like his facial expressions, his reactions,
yeah,
and especially his interactions when he's not just a normal guy,
yeah.
when things have gotten frantic.
During the
Then it's like
flashback, he is a much. The
that part.
movie becomes much better, and then when he gets
That's
when
where
Ruth
I
shows up, it becomes a much better movie.
yes, that's where
The
for me.
beginning 35 minutes or 25 minutes or whatever it was, it
Mhm.
is hard to get through.
It
It is
is.
a hard watch. It is
Yeah.
literally just him mumbling around his fucking house,
Mhm.
noting what he's out of and how bored
Yep.
he is and how it's been 3 years, and that's it. And
That's it.
then that gets broken up by our first night at the house, which
Oh,
is where this movie becomes unintentionally
oh,
absolutely
it's.
fucking brilliant.
I wasn't ready for this.
I wasn't either. So my wife and I were watching this. She watches all these movies with me because we and her
Hmm.
watch a movie almost every single night. We're big movie watchers.
Awesome.
I have a shit ton of movies, right?
Yeah.
Way more than I need. I don't have a movie buying problem. I have a movie storage problem because I don't have anywhere to put all of these movies that I own. And I used to own more movies. Before I met
Yeah.
you, when I was in college, I had a dorm in UTPB, and very
Hmm.
nice dorm, some of the best dorms in the entire state of Texas. If you're
I've heard
thinking about,
stories about the dorm.
you've heard a lot of stories about the dorms.
Yes.
So when I got to the dorms, they had a six dresser cabinet, like a six dresser in each dorm. You had a six dresser setup, which
Hmm.
with each of them pulled out, it was a very deep dresser, nice dressers, right? Real
Hmm.
beautiful dressers. I didn't put my clothes in the dressers. I put my clothes in a little fold-in storage thing I had, a little plastic one. You know what I'm talking about? You
Hmm.
could get from like Target, the little three
Yeah.
millimeter. Yeah, those things. I had all my clothes in there. I didn't have a lot of clothes. Most of my clothes I've always had hung up on hangers, and they're in my
Yeah.
closet. So I don't really have anything in my little pullouts other than like some socks, some underwear, maybe some
Yeah.
pajamas, stuff like that. Not a whole
Right.
lot. So in my dresser, in these six dresser setups, I had each of them full of movies,
Wow.
jam packed full of movies. I remember when I counted, there was close to 1,000, and
Good Lord.
that was before I even met you. And
Yeah.
when I met you, I had downsized considerably because I had to move, and it was hard to
Yeah.
move all those. And I still owned quite a bit then. They were just in
Hmm.
boxes. And they're still a lot of them are still in boxes, but
Oh yeah.
one day when we get a house,
Yeah.
I'll have a nice display that I'll take a picture of and
Yeah.
post on our site that has all of them in all of their beauty, and including the mini versions of this movie that I owned.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, the narration is the main issue with this movie. I just feel like if
Hmm.
you could have done this in so many different ways. So you could have started with the flashback that comes in later on in the movie. There's this big
I think
flashback.
so.
You could have started with that. You could have started with the first night that we're about to get to with the
Hmm.
Morgan. You could have started there. You could have started so many other places, but the narration is a huge problem, and it was so grating. Yeah, my wife tapped out. She
Yeah.
right as the first night starts, she was like, I can't watch this movie. I gotta go. So she leaves, and then like within seconds, I'm laughing hysterically, and she's like, "What
Absolutely.
happened?" And then when I back it up and I show her the first night that the vampires show up to his house, and what they do is in black and white and glorious detail, they just pick up
Hmm.
some random wood around the house and just proceed to just bang the shit out of his windows and doors
Yep.
as they say, "Come out, Morgan! Come out! Come
It's,
out, Morgan! We're gonna kill you!"
it's so good.
In about the most blanket expression monotone you can imagine.
Hmm.
And they just
Even
do that
slower than a
even slower
typical
than
like
that.
Romero zombie.
Yes, yes, they are very slow.
It's
Somehow the slowest zombies in the world.
yeah.
And as this is happening, Vincent Price is just chilling in his house, drinking tea and listening to some hard bop jazz.
Yeah.
It I would have started the movie there, maybe.
That would have been a better place to start.
Or start the movie with a flashback, not start with like 35 minutes of him driving and aimlessly shambling about doing fuck all of nothing.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, that was
it immediately
really
kills the
filler.
movie. It immediately
Absolutely.
kills the movie. You have so many
Starting it
scenes that are recycled where it's just the same thing over
that's
and over and over again. This
there
is
were
what I
so
was saying
many
about the
director
neo-realism.
choices
This is
that
the
were
neo-realism movie where it is to show them the boredom of life almost.
mm-hmm.
And
No,
this
I
is what
got
you
that.
get. This is what you get.
Well,
Cause
I'll tell you this.
goddamn.
I don't know, are we getting into the flashback part? Because let
We'll
me
get
tell
to the
you.
flashback part here in a moment. So We get more scenes of him. So you basically, yeah, let's
Oh,
just
that's
get to
right,
the
because he
fucking
does have
flashback.
more. Yeah,
Let's
because it's
just
more
get
of
to the
him
flashback.
just
It's literally just him wandering around the city doing menial tasks
yeah.
while he narrates over it, and then
Mm-hmm.
it's just that's pretty much it until we get to the flashback. And when the flashback happens, yeah, let's go ahead and talk about the flashback. The
So
flashback is the best part.
it is, well, and for me, it's the most or it's not the most struggle. It's the part where I had a really hard time keeping focus
Yeah,
because I can't see Vincent Price as a regular guy.
yeah.
Like him presenting like that, like just, you know, going like having a party or, going to work and being a scientist. And, it's like I have the same issue with Arnold Schwarzenegger in movies where they try to
Mm-hmm.
present him as just a regular guy like Jingle All the Way or something like that.
Because he stands out
Where
like a sore thumb.
yeah, because I'm like, I can't see him as anything other than Arnold Schwarzenegger. And that's the same thing with Vincent Price. I'm just picturing Vincent Price in these situations where it's like, I'm sorry, you're a frightening ghoul of a person and you're just doing regular, normal stuff. And I don't, it just doesn't work in my head. So that was a struggle. I kept,
Yeah,
or at least struggled to focus
I
because all I
gotcha.
kept saying was like, why is Vincent Price talking to these people like this? You know?
Yeah,
Like,
so the flashback starts as so after he goes and visits a gravesite, he stays out too late. He runs back to his house
mhm.
after basically fighting off the vampires
Oh, yes,
in a very
in the
similar
most
to the way Mark Wahlberg fights off the apes in Planet of the Apes, just
yeah, it's
pushing and punching them as he walks by.
the most unthreatening situation for a guy to be in
Yeah.
is
So
fighting off those
he
vampires.
makes it back to his house, and when he gets back to his house, he decides to spend another night listening to some hard bop jazz,
Mhm.
smoking some cigarettes,
Yep.
drinking some tea, and this time he decides to watch some films. And the
Yes.
films of his wife and child immediately send him into a flashback. And we go back
Mhm.
to before the start of the plague. And this is where I think the movie should have started at.
Yes.
And you could like re-edit the movie almost in a way,
Oh,
and
yeah.
the movie would become infinitely better
I think so.
because it should have started here. Um,
Yeah.
because this is more interesting because now we see Vincent and we learn like he had a family, he had a wife.
Mhm.
We see them having a little dinner party where they have a bunch of people coming over. We learned that he is some kind of scientist.
Some kind of,
He works
yeah.
in a lab. We never really kind of exactly know
Yeah.
what he's supposed to be doing at this lab, but he's doing something. In the Will Smith version, they're supposed to be trying to cure cancer, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
but he gets shown in the newspaper about the plague, which immediately reminded
Mhm.
me of me and my wife sitting in bed and me looking at my phone and seeing news of COVID in China and being like, oh,
Yep.
I wonder if that's going to come here.
Yeah.
3 months
Yeah, some parts
later,
were a little
I was
too
off of
relatable.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. And Vincent says, I don't believe in universal disease. Calm down, Sharon. And immediately I'm just like, did you sleep through your history class? Because, like, you surely would have heard about the Black Plague by this
Right?
point, like
Spanish
the
flu, I
Spanish
mean,
flu, yellow fever. But no, universal disease. I don't believe in it. I just don't.
it's it couldn't go airborne.
Yeah, it couldn't go airborne. You dumb bitch. Get out of here.
Yeah, really. Like,
Yeah, he's an
who's the
idiot.
scientist here?
Who's the scientist, me or you? So he's trying to convince his wife that he's right, that COVID isn't going to happen, and she thinks he's a COVID denier. Maybe they should have just listened to people because the next scene we get to him and his wife are basically dying,
Yep.
and then
Well, the daughter definitely is.
the daughter is having a big struggle. Like she's got a whole like covering over her to help her
Mhm.
breathe, to keep the air from getting into her lungs. She's
Yeah.
coughing. She keeps calling out for help.
Yeah.
And what is Vincent's reaction? After his wife is in a similar state and she's hiding
Yes.
from Vincent how bad she is as well.
Yeah.
And his reaction is maybe we should keep her home from school today.
Yeah. And
This is how COVID spread, people. This is why it spread.
yep.
Because, yeah, you should keep her fucking home from school. She's obviously contagious.
Yeah.
She's coughing all over herself. She is dying. Yeah, you should probably keep her home.
Yeah.
Vincent might be the worst father of all time. Um,
Yeah.
Also, how is he a
He-
scientist? I'm like, okay. He's the world's worst fucking scientist in the world.
Oh,
I'm not
absolutely.
buying him being a science of anything. Like
No.
I'm more of a scientist than he is. God
Yeah.
damn it. I'm saying it right then and there.
There. Yep.
So it just and then we meet the character of Ben, who is, I
Oh yeah.
believe, also the zombie who's screaming, Morgan!
Yes, he is.
Morgan! Yeah. And
Well, he's also the
so
first person you see with like the garlic garland on his door with the mirror.
yeah.
So he's the first one you see doing that. And it's like, wait, already they know?
Yeah, yeah, he's putting garlic on the doors. Yeah, they already have some ideas of what's going on. Like I said, the
Yeah.
book presents this completely differently.
Mm-hmm.
The book does have flashbacks, but they're
That makes
presented a little
sense.
bit different than this,
Mm-hmm.
and they kind of add to a little bit of the world building. I don't think the book is necessarily like a great book either. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to say that right there. It was the author's first novel, and it has some
Yeah.
first novel isms to it.
Right.
And we'll get to that when we get to the end of the movie because turns out we're not that far away from the end, guys.
Yeah,
There ain't a
really.
whole lot. There ain't a whole lot more after this flashback. That kind of gets to the end of it pretty quickly. Interesting thing that has happening during this time is that we learned that the TV channels are showing 24-hour news. I thought that was kind of cool to
Yeah,
see
that
that in
was.
1960. Like that was
Yeah.
interesting that they would be doing that. Like, oh, this is so much of a panic that yeah, we're gonna move to 24-hour news coverage around the clock,
Mm-hmm.
telling you everything you need to know. We also find out why he's hiding his sick daughter. He doesn't want
Yes.
anyone to know that she's sick because he's worried that she's then going to get thrown into the pit.
Yep. No doctors.
You call no one. Let no one into this house, you hear? So yeah, he's basically trying to hide that his daughter is so sick that she's blind and basically dying. His
Yeah.
wife is also almost blind and dying. He doesn't want any
Mm-hmm.
doctors in the house though because, he just doesn't trust their phony medicine. I just don't
Right.
believe in universal disease, Sharon. It's bullshit. Things don't spill in the wind. Makes no sense.
Airborne
Yeah,
disease. Who's ever heard of such a thing?
who's ever heard of such a thing? You dumb bitch. So he makes her promise that she is not going to call anyone. She's not going to call the doctor. He basically
She
makes her
def.
promise that she's going to go to work because
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
gotta go, honey.
Gotta keep working.
Gotta clock in. Gonna be people at office are gonna be real pissed if I don't clock in. But you stay home with our dying daughter. Don't call anyone to get help. If she
Yep.
dies, just leave her. Let
Mm-hmm.
her cry. She'll be fine. She'll work it through her system. It's just a little plague. It's just a friendly
you
little
know.
plague. It's not a big deal. So they're burning bodies in the pit because they feel like, and he even justifies this, that it's the best reasonable way we know how to handle it is by
Yep.
just throwing them into a burning open fire. Why else would you do?
Yeah, really.
Which is extremely stupid. It is maybe one of the more dumbest things in this movie.
Oh,
Um, yeah, he makes her promise, and I wrote down the flashback is maybe the most interesting thing in this movie. Why not just start the movie with this? That would have
yeah.
made way more sense. Anyway, so Ben is sick. He tries to go pick up Ben. Ben wants nothing to do with him, tells him to get the hell
Yep.
away from him. He goes to work, and yeah, as he gets to work, there's
Nobody's
almost
there.
no one almost there. Almost everyone is gone. Virtually
Yep. There's.
everyone is gone. It's him and one other guy, and that's
Yeah.
it. So he showed up and let his daughter die and his wife almost
Mm-hmm.
die for basically nothing.
Yep.
Basically nothing. He goes back home to work and when he shows up, his wife has called for a doctor because
Yep.
his daughter was dying and his daughter has died.
Yes.
And the truck has come to pick his dead daughter up, and they're going to go
Mm-hmm.
throw her in the pit. And he rushes in his amazing car. He's
Yeah.
got
Oh,
a great
absolutely.
car in this movie.
Yes.
Vincent Price. Hopefully, he got to keep the car after this. Don't know, but that
Honestly,
car was pretty cool.
it was.
Um, so he leaves his wife to go try to find his daughter. He gets to the pit and he does find his daughter, but or at least he thinks no one knows.
It's yeah.
He finds a child wrapped in a bag in a burlap sack, ready to be thrown into the pit.
And the
He's not.
military does very little to stop him. They're like,
No,
hey,
no.
now.
The military's like, hey, hello. And he gets all the way to the front lines, and the guy that's
Yeah,
about to throw the kid in the pit says, like, hey, my daughter's in there too, which is
yeah,
extremely sad.
yeah.
And
That was actually a pretty good line.
yeah, that was good. Like I said, I don't even know how I feel about this movie. Part of me hates this movie, but it's only
Yeah,
because of the beginning half. After the
that's fair.
flashback, it becomes a much better movie. And the
I
only
think
thing
so.
that saves the beginning half is the hilariousness of
Oh,
Morgan,
absolutely.
come
Yeah,
out.
that.
And some of the weird zoom ins onto Vincent Price's face as
Yes.
he's getting attacked. Those are pretty hysterical too.
Yes.
Other than that, the movie is a pretty hard watch at the beginning.
Yes.
Um, so he sees his daughter thrown into the pit. He goes back home,
Hmm.
and pretty much immediately his wife also dies.
Yes.
Um, you know, so he takes her to the pit on his own and dumps. Oh no, he's sorry. He doesn't take her to the pit. He takes her
No,
to go bury her. Yeah,
he
because he
wants
doesn't
something
want to
more
burn her.
dignified. He
Yes,
just
yes, he
wants to
doesn't.
take her out to an unmarked,
Yeah, yeah. So his wife dies, and he decides he doesn't want to put her in the pit because he's like, I'm not doing that to her. She deserves better than that. God damn it.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he does say, I won't let them take you. He's like basically saying that. He's like, not going to let them do that to you too.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Not what happened to our daughter. So instead, he
yeah.
takes her and goes and buries her in an unmarked grave. Drives back home, and as soon as he gets back home, who starts banging out the door saying, "Let me in, let me in."
Yep.
It's his motherfucking wife,
It's his wife covered in dirt.
covered in dirt. And
The only
then
one that doesn't call him Morgan in this whole, like the only zombie that doesn't call him Morgan is she's like
it's true.
Robert because that's his first name.
Yes. And then the flashback is over. That's what signifies
Yes.
our flashback is over. Another day, another dollar, another
Yeah.
slow moving scene of him aimlessly walking with narration. God
Yes.
damn it. Thankfully, we finally get another character that enters into this movie. So the dog comes and the dog leaves. And
Yes.
like I said, this is different than in the movie. In the book. In the book, he spends more time with the dog or trying to find the dog. That's
Right.
kind of one of those like he hears the dog and it kind of becomes like this thing of him trying to locate this dog, only to
Hmm.
eventually find it and see that it's dead. Um,
Oh, that's
yeah, yeah, that's kind of what happens in the book. In the movie, um, similar, he sees the dog, he goes after the
yeah.
dog, but he doesn't spend a week doing it. It's more of like a
No.
short period of time. And similarly in the movie, when the dog shows back up, the dog is also killed.
Yeah.
So sorry for those of you that are Does the Dog Die fans. Me and my
Yeah, I was
wife
gonna
also
say
are big fans of that website, and this
yes.
movie does not pass that test. The
It
dog
does not
is,
pass.
but you can't really see it in the movie because it's so
No.
poorly filmed and in black and white. It just looks like the dog is hurt, and yeah, and then it cuts away rather quickly. So it's not
Yeah, it does.
gratuitous. It's not gratuitous. Yeah.
It's just a dirty
Um,
dog. That's the worst part, for
so
the
at
most
this
part.
point, I made the note that I was watching this movie on my PlayStation 4, and at this
Oh.
point, my PlayStation 4 remote died, and I put jealous, honestly. Um, it got out of this movie, so
Nice.
I did not. Um,
No.
so he goes wondering and wondering, and similar to Deluge, if he would have just walked just a little bit further than he normally walks,
Hmm.
he would have found a whole other person because he does, and
Yep.
he finds a female character. And finally, we get the second half of this movie, which is unfortunately not long enough to support it because it also is not bad. Um,
No.
it's just that first half is just, oh boy. Yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, Vincent Price works better off of other people, and this is where you get a better Vincent Price. Um, I guess what would you say? Performance? That's the word.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He finds this woman, he snatches her up, takes her home, and immediately makes him smell his garlic.
Yes.
Yeah, he takes her home and just like he within seconds is like just looking at her and is like,
Hmm.
smell my garlic. And just starts rubbing this garlic all over on her. Like, like which immediately gets me to the next question because he's constantly running out of garlic.
Yeah.
It's been 3 years. Everywhere he drives, the landscaping is immaculate. So
Yeah.
someone's keeping up with this land.
Yeah.
Someone is tending to these crops. But beyond that, why not just grow your own garlic?
Yeah, really.
You could easily do it. I've grown my own garlic by accident
Hmm.
before. It's not
Yeah.
super difficult. So I don't know why he doesn't just grow garlic. Rather,
Yeah,
then
really.
you don't have to leave your house. Like you could just stay there. Same thing with the
Yeah.
gasoline. He goes and picks it up and fills the car up. Why not just go and get a bunch of it and then just bring it
Yeah.
to your house and stockpile it? You've been doing this for 3 years. Do you not think things are like you are the world's dumbest person? It's been three
Absolutely.
years and you haven't developed any kind of like, oh Lord.
Couldn't find a
Yeah.
better place to live, like a more fortified place, maybe even a bunker underground,
Yeah, no,
something.
she's not
Just the
interested
same
in.
house.
Yeah, she's not interested in smelling his garlic, but he makes her
Nope.
smell her garlic, and makes her smell her garlic. He then reveals that he is Batman, as he believes that the reason he is immune to the plague is because he was bitten by a bat, and
Yes.
that is what caused it on a recon trip.
That.
Yeah, so we learn very quickly that she is actually on a reconnaissance trip. That there is a group of
Mm-hmm.
survivors that are infected with the plague, but have learned to adapt and survive.
Well, they've
And
they've made a vaccine,
yes, and
but it only lasts for so long. They have to keep
only
using it.
yeah, it only lasts for so long. Meanwhile, he believes his blood to be the cure, basically,
Mm-hmm.
which is what he aims to do with Ruth. He aims to basically cure her, and
Mm-hmm.
well, he does
Yeah.
without really even asking her permission.
Yeah. It was like so much for body autonomy.
Yeah, no, he
And
just kind of does it. He just
yep,
kind of does it.
just
Yeah,
she's
it's a little
sleeping
weird.
and then she's got a needle in her arm.
But at this point, he also gets told what a monster he has been and how, like, the other side views him, basically. And this is all
Yes.
very much from the book as well.
Oh.
This is it kind of in keeping with the book. These things do happen. The ending is, like I said, very different. But
Oh,
yes,
okay.
this is in the book. Yeah, she does meet with him. She does tell him that basically they view him as a monster. He's killed tons of people. He actually killed her husband in the book. She mentions that.
Oh.
And in spite of that, she's kind of infatuated and almost in love with him in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of develop a little romance. In the movie, it speeds it up so fast
Yes.
that
It
it kind of makes it a little bit hard to believe.
it's it's pretty hard to buy that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So he ends up telling her basically that he's going to cure her, and he does. She falls asleep after they have a long discussion, and after he refuses to let her leave, he makes her stay with him, and she
Mm-hmm.
tells him that they're all going to try to kill him, basically that they're all coming for him
Yes.
tonight, and he needs to get out of there if he wants to live. And he decides that they're going to hunker down and make it through the night, and
Mm-hmm.
just basically refuses to listen to her. He probably should have listened to her.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and then now the what was his name? Ben?
Yeah, Ben.
He wises up. He's a smart zombie or vampire. It's really hard to see them as vampires.
They are vampires, yes.
I gotta keep reminding myself
Yeah.
because the whole time I'm like, whoa, this is a zombie attack. Nope, vampire attack. But
Yes.
he's finally able to break the mirror, and that was it. That was the only defense on that door.
That was it. That was all he
Wasn't
had
even
to do.
locked.
Not even locked.
Oh my god.
That's it. Yeah, so after he cures her, he for some reason he leaves the room to go look at her DNA on his
Mm-hmm.
microscope. He could have just brought her into the room and she would have
Yeah.
been fine. But he doesn't. He tells her to wait and see. I'm gonna go look at it in the other
Mm-hmm.
room. And when he does that is when Ben breaks in and attacks her. Oh no.
Yep.
Yeah. And we fast forward to the end of the movie because that's basically what happens next. The other crew shows
Yeah,
up,
they
guns in
they
tow,
have that's
and
whenever
we
you get the battle, or not I say battle, but like the conflict between Vincent Price and this other
yes.
group of people that are all wearing like black and stuff. Is like
Yeah, it's they have a
what
bizarre
kind of group
outfit.
is this?
I it's so in the book it's a little bit more defined.
Hmm.
And I believe in Omega Man with Heston, it's a little the group is a little bit more defined
Oh,
and
okay.
given character. And I'm not sure in I Am Legend. I don't remember. I've only seen that movie like twice.
I don't think they really were vocal at all.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
and in fact, I don't think in I Am Legend, I don't think there were a group of
There,
people.
huh, there may not be.
They
That may have been
just
one of the things they
no.
changed.
Yeah.
So in this movie, he has us a good old fashioned firefight, which is kind of funny because
Yep.
he's just walking around throwing smoke bombs kind of aimlessly,
Yeah, that was insane to me. I was like,
just
wait,
throwing them everywhere.
there's all these weapons and all this stuff, and he grabs smoke bombs.
Yeah,
At first, I thought they were just regular grenades or something.
yeah,
And I was like, well, that's not going to do anything. And then it
yeah.
just goes off. Well, because when it goes off, I thought it was a regular grenade, but it just does this little pop thing. And I was like, well, okay, what was that? It takes me a little bit to realize they're smoke bombs. That's bad on me,
Yeah, I
but
think they're supposed to be like maybe garlic bombs. Like maybe he's throwing garlic at them too, is maybe the idea is that they're smoke and garlic infused. I
oh,
don't really know though.
yeah, it
Because it
really
doesn't really
didn't.
go anywhere. The only thing that he
No,
does is
it
he
does
ends
not.
up cornering himself into a church, and the only
Hmm.
visually interesting part of the movie is the end of it, where it kind of zooms
Yes.
out and you see this really cool church, and he's surrounded on all sides, and it does look
Yes.
actually visually kind of compelling for the
Hmm.
first time in the entire movie. At the very end,
Yeah.
it actually looks like someone put some effort into making this a visual movie instead
Yes.
of just a guy aimlessly wandering around his house commenting on needing to go buy garlic.
Yeah. Well, and also I'll say this about the beginning of it, the or and the flashback. The design of everything really didn't look all that different
Yeah.
between the normal time and then the after time. Like,
Yeah,
I didn't
everything
see
looked
enough
about
of
the
a
same.
difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at the very end, he calls them all freaks, and
Yeah, that
which is
part
kind of a
was out
dick
of
move.
nowhere.
Kind of a dick move.
Yeah, he's just, "Hey,
Said you're
you're
all
freaks."
freaks, freaks.
I was like, "Oh,
Uh,
that's what you wanted to say? You didn't wanna say, 'Hey, I can cure you. Stop killing me?'" You
no,
know?
no, no. At the very end, though, he finally realizes the cruel joke of the movie, which is that they were both scared of each other at the
Yeah,
end, and they stab him to death, and he's dead.
and he's dead.
Which is different than how the book ends. The book, he is given, Ruth gives him, he's captured by them.
Oh,
And after being captured, Ruth gives him a suicide pill, and
oh.
she informs him then of like how everyone views him, and kind of he kind of tells her what he wishes for society going forward, and then he kills himself. Yeah,
Hmm,
yeah, which is a completely different ending than
it's
the
very
movie does.
different.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if any of the movies have ever followed through with the book's ending because the book kind of ends on like on kind of a downer. He's not
You're right.
he is a failed hero.
Yeah.
He did not achieve he did not complete his heroic cycle. But he realizes
Mhm.
it in such an interesting way that maybe the only compelling part of the book. Um so some other differences. Actually, we'll talk about the book real fast because I did read the
Yeah.
book in preparation for this. It was an okay book. It has a lot of, like I said, I pointed out some of the differences. It develops
Mhm.
differently. It also has a
Yeah.
completely different ending. In the book, like I said, he's captured. Ruth gives him a suicide pill. Yeah. This was his very first novel, and usually
Mhm.
when an author writes their first novel, they tend to be a little bit more. I don't want to say rambling, but more like kind of
I
independently
think
spirited, like
unrefined, a little
unrefined,
more
more like open-minded to experimentation.
okay.
Like I'm thinking of like Don DeLillo's first novel, Americana, is kind of
Mhm.
very much like a road trip novel where he's just kind of talking about this guy who's leaving, I think it's Chicago, and traveling around the Southwest and kind of
Mm.
aimlessly looking for meaning in life. And the book has a lot of kind of like long diatribe monologue sentences of people kind of like
Mm.
espousing philosophical truths, and it's a very kind of like
Oh.
low key experimental novel in a way. And I think you see a lot of that with like first novels because it's like if I only
Mhm.
get to do one, I want this to be the one that like stands out, right? I may only get to publish this one book, so I want it to be the one that like is
Okay.
distinct.
Right.
And this book has a little bit of that, but I did look up a book review. This was a
Mhm.
book review from Damon Knight. This is 1956, and this is on Wikipedia as well. It pops up on there too. It was a
Oh,
fun
yeah.
review though. So this is just to summarize it. This is not the full review, but this is just a portion of it that I thought was funny. This is his review a couple years after the book came out. He said the book is full of good ideas, every other one of which is dropped and kicked out of sight. The characters are a child's drawings, as blank-eyed and expressionless as the author himself.
Ooh.
The plot limps. That's the sentence. The plot limps.
Mm-hmm.
All the same, the story could have been an admirable minor work in the Dracula tradition.
Oh.
So basically, yeah, I kind of can see that a little bit after reading the book.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in a lot of ways, this movie and this book kind of reminds me of John Carter of Mars. Um,
Oh, okay.
and so if you remember the movie John Carter of Mars,
Mm-hmm.
that came out a couple of years ago. I say a couple of years ago, it's probably 10 years ago, but it
Probably
was a
like, yeah.
flop. Yeah, John Carter of Mars was a big Disney flop.
Yep.
I like that movie.
Yeah.
I think it's good, but I get why people didn't like it because John Carter of
Right.
Mars is a primary, like a foundational influence on a lot of sci-fi and a lot of
Right.
fantasy novels like Star Wars. You would not have
Mm-hmm.
Star Wars. You would not have Star Wars without John Carter of Mars.
Mm-hmm.
However, for the bulk of the movie viewing world, Star Wars came out first because
Right.
the John Carter of Mars adaptation, the big budget Disney one, did not come out until many, many years after Star Wars. So
Mm-hmm.
you get to the problem of the people like me who saw John Carter of Mars after Star Wars. To
Mm-hmm.
me, it was a little bit harder to initially enjoy John Carter of Mars because I found it somewhat derivative. But in actuality, Star Wars is derivative. It's just I saw John Carter of Mars afterwards.
Right.
So I'm kind of ingesting the material in a different way. And in a way,
Right.
this movie is kind of that way too, because I
Mm-hmm.
saw Night of the Living Dead before I saw this. I
Ah,
saw
yes.
Dawn of the Dead before I saw this. I saw
Mm-hmm.
28 Weeks and 28 Days and 28,
Mm-hmm.
I played the Fallout games before this.
Yes.
So when I'm watching this, it's kind of hard for me to enjoy it as much because I'm
Mm-hmm.
reminded of all those other things that are similar to it, but just better. Like Night of the
Right.
Living Dead is very similar to this movie in a lot of
I see
ways,
that.
but Night of the Living Dead is much much better version of this
Oh yeah.
movie.
No, I'll agree with you that on that one.
Um, but not completely all bad. The book did
No.
have some good merits. In 2005, Dan Schneider, not that one, he
No.
wrote, despite having vampires in it, it is not a horror, sci-fi, or a vampire novel at all. In the deepest sense, instead, it is perhaps the greatest novel written on human loneliness,
Oh,
which
okay.
I'm not sure if I agree with that, but I find it
No, I'm sure
interesting at
there's
least. I find it interesting.
that's that's a fair take, I imagine.
Yeah. So the author of this book and the movie, because he wrote both, was really
Mm-hmm.
inspired by Mary Shelley's Last Man, which is a much better read than this book. I'm going to be
Yeah,
honest.
I've never read that one either.
I would say if you want to read like I Am Legend, in my honest opinion, it's not a bad book, but I would just read
Mm-hmm.
Last Man instead.
Oh,
But
okay.
hey, hey,
Yeah.
what do I know? What do I know?
Right.
Um,
You're just an English teacher. What do you know?
I,
This is just your job.
different people can have different opinions on books. So there's a lot of books that I don't
That's fair.
particularly have a fondness of, and this may be one that, like I said, I don't hate it. It
Yeah.
does give me a lot of like first bookisms. There's a lot of like kind of weird things. There's a lot of the way it's written. I don't really like. It does have a lot of narration. In the basic writing sense, you should
Yeah.
almost never use narration or use it as sparingly as possible
Mm-hmm.
because movies are supposed to be visual and you
Absolutely.
don't need narration. In a book, you have more room for narration because you can have a
Mm-hmm.
character talking to themselves,
Yes.
which I guess you could have done in this movie. You could have had him like he's 3 years into this crazy nightmare
Oh yeah.
scenario and he's kind of cuckoo, so now he's talking to himself maybe.
That would make
But that
total
would
sense.
also have changed the character and how the character is written in the book. I don't know if
Right.
Vincent Price would have pulled that off without just making it comical, though. I don't know. I
That's
don't know.
yeah.
I'm not sure. So this book, I should say, was turned into four different movies, and which
Mm-hmm.
gets us to the end of our podcast tonight because we are not rolling the dice tonight.
Nope.
I guess before we get to that part, I jumped the gun. Final thoughts. What did you think about
Final
this
thoughts.
movie? We went into it, and I said that we might disagree a little because before we
Yeah.
started recording, You told me when we first got on the call tonight, you said, I like this movie. And I said, oh boy, then.
So
So
yeah,
go
I
ahead.
think for me, what really did it was, and I was kind of checked out for a lot of it, but it was once, I think it was right after um, it was either during, well, definitely during the flashback scene where you get a sense of like Vincent Price is a good performer. He's a good actor. He can do these things, but and it's a lot of facial expressions and a lot of stuff like that. Especially the part where he goes to the bed where his daughter is no longer there, and the way, like, I don't know, I think he conveys it really well. And I was like, okay, that sucked me in right there. And when he sees his wife and he just kind of breaks down, I was like, he's pulling, he's making it work. And so that was very compelling to me, was, watching him actually, like, act basically, because he wasn't doing a lot of that at the beginning. In the beginning, he was just, and I get why he was trying to convey that, like, that lonely guy, that aimless. It's been 3 years. It's just the same thing over and over. It's a nightmare situation. It's awful, but eh, they didn't. I don't think they did it very well. But then once you get Ruth in there, another character for him, or another actor for him to play off of, he really pulls it out, and that's when I really started to enjoy. And despite all of the issues with production, with the design, with the sets were very uninteresting, forgettable even, and all of that, I think once you get full on Vincent Price performance, I think it saves it for me. And I just enjoyed it. And um so that was the part I think I liked. That's what made me like it. And
Yeah.
actually kind of made me curious about the book more than I Am Legend with Will Smith did.
Yeah.
That one didn't make me curious at all. So,
So this is my, I guess, Siskel to your Ebert.
mhm.
I would politely describe this movie as uneven because
Mhm.
before the flashback, it is the one of the most boring, horribly written, monotonous, giant waste of times I've ever subjected myself to for about 30 minutes. It is boring as absolute hell. I've seen silent movies that are more interesting. I've seen art movies that don't have plots that are more interesting visually. It is boring. Once the flashback happens, the movie does improve, which is why I'll say it's uneven. Um, After the flashback, we get him playing off of characters, which he is a much better actor than. He cannot hold a movie by himself. He doesn't command a screen presence. He doesn't have any body language that really presents to you that you're seeing anything. You almost need like a stage actor for the first half of this movie if you're going to start it with just him wandering around by himself with narration. Because if not, then the movie just struggles and it struggles hard. Um, After, like I said, after the flashback, it does improve. I enjoy him with Ruth. I think that part's great. I feel like the movie should have started there and then you could have maybe, I don't know, uh just I'm not even sure how to fix this movie, honestly. um I enjoyed the part with the come out Morgan. That part was that part made me laugh hysterically. In that
Yes.
way, it is a so bad it's good movie. It has a cult audience. It's not for me. I found it to be a very boring movie. I think after the flashback, it improves, but even then, it doesn't improve enough to make me enjoy it because there's not really a whole lot after the flashback that really sustains me. After the
Mhm.
flashback, I'm annoyed that he's a shitty scientist and a horrible dad and a horrible father. I mean, I guess both those things go hand in hand. And a horrible husband, and just like I'm like, all right, all these horrible things are happening to you, but you caused a lot of this yourself. And I think they could have presented him a little bit better and made him more sympathetic. Instead, he just kind of comes across like a dick at times.
Mhm.
Not that he deserves to lose his wife and child, but you know, he definitely is unsympathetic to me at times with his presentation. Ruth is saves the movie when she comes in.
Mhm.
Shit, the dog saves the movie when the dog comes in.
Yeah.
The movie is not for me. I would say it's not Vincent Price's best movie. I can see why people are inspired by it. I get it. Maybe I don't know. Maybe it's just maybe I need to watch it again. The come out Morgan is hysterical, but
Yeah.
it's a hard pass for me. I would say that when you're looking for post-apocalyptic movies, I need a little bit more excitement than 40, 35 minutes of Vincent Price narration
Yeah.
as he shambles about doing absolutely fucking nothing. Which gets us to next week because rather than doing absolutely fucking nothing and rather than rolling the dice, we are choosing what we're watching next week because we are
Hmm.
going to continue in this train of talking about I Am Legend because we're just going to go ahead and watch the 1971 version of with Charlton Heston called Omega Man.
Yeah. Another one I haven't seen either. So this will be a.
Uh, this is one I have also not seen.
Ooh.
I have seen I Am Legend with Will Smith. I have
Yeah.
seen this one now. Like I said, I
Yeah.
own several copies of it. Had not seen it in
Right.
a very long time. Don't actually now that I've watched it, I don't even know if I made it through it the first time I watched it years
That's.
ago. Because I remember watching it in like a college, like a bunch of people got together to watch like old horror movies, and this was one of them. I think I
Mm,
might have like stepped out during the narration to
that's.
go get a beer and just never came back. I that literally might have been a thing. Maybe I ended up talking to somebody. I don't know, but like I just do not remember it because I if I was like a 22-year-old drunk 22-year-old watching this, I might have been having the time of my life, or I might have gotten up and just left because it was kind of boring. It's a hard movie to sit through. So yeah, next week we're gonna watch the '71 version with Omega with Charlton Heston called Omega Man.
Hmm.
Which, like I said, Charlton Heston did watch this version and he thought his version was better. The author,
Oh,
the author of the novel, always maintained that he thought this version was superior to the Charlton Heston version.
that's interesting.
So we'll see. We'll see which of the two is better. I guess that'll be our premise for next week's episode. Which
Yeah.
of these two is better? And speaking of episodes, we got some stuff planned that we're
Yes.
gonna go ahead and share as well because we're gonna have our first crossover episode coming up soon.
Yes.
We're gonna do a crossover with Monster Movie Fun Time Go podcast where we are going to
Hmm.
be jointly talking about movie called Zombie Apocalypse. Um,
Yes.
not sure when that's coming out, but sometime soon here in October. And we're also going to be doing our very first. It's going to be coming out next week as well. You're going to get two episodes next week. One is
Hmm.
going to be Omega Man, and the other is going to be our very first episode in celebration of 10 episodes. We're
Hmm.
going to celebrate episode 10 with a little bonus episode where we do what I'm calling and now for something completely different where we are going to be looking at one of the many, many, many TV pilots that were never picked up that I have saved on my computer. And this one is a doozy. This
Yes.
is the 1990s never made it to network air TV version of Kevin Smith's Clerks.
Yes.
And it is 20 minutes long. It is available on YouTube.
Hmm.
It is going to be linked during the episode, so you can go and watch it before. If you're listening to this, go and find it beforehand. I'll
Hmm.
link it at the end of this episode. If you are watching, if you're not watching this episode, then you won't know about this, so I guess it
Yep.
won't matter for you. But
Nice.
look forward to next week, so we can. You're going to hear Clerks, get to have us talk about Kevin Smith, and
Yes.
man, I have a lot to talk about. I got a lot to
Oh
say
yeah.
about Kevin Smith. Good, bad,
Yes.
indifferent. We'll
Hmm.
talk about a lot of Kevin Smith movies. Got a lot to say there. And then we'll
Yep.
also talk about Omega Man, Charlton Heston, a guy that we have now talked about for three times.
Yep.
And he has appeared in our podcast. Another name for the podcast Hall of Fame, right up there with
Yep.
Michael Clark Duncan, right?
Yep.
And the movie Pain and Gain. Those three things kind of we
That's
loop
right.
back around over and over and over again. Got to find a way to tie it in every single episode.
Oh, I
Could
like
I
that.
could not find a way to tie it in any way, shape, or form into this
No,
episode, other
not
than
this
to
one.
say that to watch this movie, the first half is a pain, only so that then you gain the benefit of the movie ending.
That's very good.
And with that, we'll end tonight's episode. See you guys next week. Thanks for
Take it
watching.
easy.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.